Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different, a cold case review.
On the biggest cold case of them all.
Exactly. We are conducting a forensic audit of death itself, and this really isn't about belief, it's about evidence.
It is. We need to move past, the sensationalism, the cultural comfort food, and conduct a really surgical investigation into the near-death experience, the NDE.
You're talking about what the sources call ontological vertigo.
Yes, that's the feeling. It's that moment you realize the solid world you've always accepted, the whole stage set.
It's just papier-mâché.
And it's getting wet. You see the wood behind the paint. Our mission here is to figure out if an NDE is a real glimpse behind that curtain, or if it's just a beautiful final biological glitch.
Yeah, and to do that properly, we have to let the materialist prosecutor make their case first. I'll play that role. Because if the idea of surviving death can't withstand a ruthless assault from pure chemistry, then it's not knowledge.
It's just fantasy.
It's fantasy. So, okay, let's unpack the most damning evidence against the soul.
Let's see the crime scene photos.
We start with the brain as a survival machine, a very clever one, and NDEs. They're its final, brilliant chemical trick.
Well,
the most compelling argument comes from, well, the laboratory of illusion. I'm talking about psychedelics.
you mean DMT?
Exactly. There was research at Imperial College London, Dr. Timmerman's team. They were able to replicate almost perfectly the core elements of a classic NDE.
The feeling of crossing a threshold, the geometric domes.
Encounters with entities, that sense of oceanic peace, all of it. And they did it with a simple injection of N-dimethyltryptamine, DMT.
And the data there is, it's pretty inescapable. They used the Grayson scale, which is the established medical tool for this. And they found an almost one-to-one statistical overlap between the DMT trips and the NDE narratives.
So the materialist conclusion is devastatingly simple.
Yeah.
If you can replicate paradise with the chemical injection, why on earth would we assume that natural death is anything more than the brain giving itself a massive endogenous dose of the same chemical?
It's a final chemical airbag.
It's the ultimate palliative care. The brain ensuring consciousness doesn't go out screaming, but just dissolves peacefully into light and geometry. Case closed.
Okay, that's argument A. And it's a very strong case against the sensation of it all. It's hard to refute.
But there's more.
There is. You also have to look at the simulator of death. When you audit thousands of NDE stories, over 15,000 of them, the closest drug mimic isn't always DMT, it's ketamine.
A dissociative anesthetic. Why is that a better fit?
Because of how it works. Ketamine blocks the NMDA receptors in the brain.
Which are crucial for what? Memory, sensory input.
Memory, learning, sensory integration, all of it. So when you block them, you essentially isolate the mind from the body. You get absolute dissociation.
And that's what triggers the panoramic life review.
Yes. All your memories come flooding back, but they're completely detached from what your senses are doing or not doing.
So the argument is that cardiac arrest, the actual event of dying, does the exact same thing chemically.
Precisely. Your heart stops. No blood, no oxygen. That's ischemia and hypoxia. It triggers a neurochemical storm in the brain that, the argument goes, causes a massive natural blocking of those same NMDA receptors.
The mind is locked inside itself.
Forced to watch reruns from its own memory banks while the theater burns down.
Okay, what about the most iconic image? The light at the end of the tunnel.
The materialist explanation for that is, it's maybe the most cynical thing I've ever heard. It's a technical failure.
A glitch in the hardware.
A glitch in the eyeball. As oxygen levels drop, your retina starts to fail. The peripheral parts are more sensitive, so they go dark first. That creates the tunnel walls.
Leaving just a bright spot of central vision.
The last part of your visual system to shut down. The brain, now totally cut off and drowning in chemicals, interprets this retinal failure as a meaningful journey towards a destination.
So death is just a private movie. A theater of broken puppets.
A completely solipsistic event.
The prosecutor rests. We are clever dust, and the light is a dying fuse.
And the prosecutor's done an elegant job of explaining the sensation, the hallucination, the peace, all of it. But they cannot explain one single crucial element.
Which is?
Veridical external information. You cannot hallucinate data you didn't previously know, especially when your hardware is demonstrably offline. This is where the whole chemical defense it collapses.
So now we move from the simulation to the anomalies.
Now it gets really interesting. Let's start with the AWARE mystery. Dr. Sam Parnia's AWARE-2 study.
This was the big one. They monitored hundreds of patients during cardiac arrest.
Right, for up to an hour after the heart stopped. Now, medically speaking, about 20 seconds after the heart stops, The EEG flatlines. It's called burst suppression, electrical silence.
The computer is unplugged, zero activity.
That's what should happen. But the monitors detected these sudden, sustained peaks of high-frequency electrical activity.
What kind of activity?
Gamma waves, between 25 and 100 hertz. Gamma is the signature for hyperlucidity, for deep insight, for complex problem solving. Keep consciousness.
Wait, let me get this straight. A brain that is clinically flatlined, suffocating, with no blood, is showing the electrical signature of being more aware than you and I are right now.
That is the paradox. It's undeniable. If the organ that supposedly produces consciousness is off, but consciousness is at its peak,
then the brain isn't the producer.
it has to be a filter, a reducing valve. And in that context, death isn't the broadcast ending, it's the TV breaking, which for a moment lets the entire raw, unfiltered signal flood the room.
That changes everything. It flips the model from production to reception. But, if the AWARE study is the clue, the Pam Reynolds case is the smoking gun.
It is the single piece of evidence that shatters the materialist model on contact. You have to understand the details. Barrow Neurological Institute, 1991, Operation Standstill.
This was for a brain aneurysm, right? They had to effectively kill her to operate.
Exactly. They chilled her body to 15 degrees Celsius. That's 60 degrees Fahrenheit. They stopped her heart, stopped her breathing, and drained all the blood from her head. Zero brain waves.
And critically, zero sensory input.
Her eyes were taped shut. Her ears were plugged with speakers blasting 100 decibel clicks to ensure total auditory silence in the brainstem. She was blind, deaf, and biologically inert.
So, no input channels. What did she report?
This is the core of it. Post-operation, she described specific, verifiable details from the operating room. Two things stand out. First, the surgical saw they used to open her skull. She called it the Midas Rex saw.
How would she know that?
She couldn't. She described it as looking like an electric toothbrush, and its case looking like mechanics' socket wrenches. That tool was under a sterile drape until the moment they used it.
That's not the language of a hallucination. That is technical observation.
This is the audio. While clinically deafened, she transcribed a conversation. The team was having a problem with her femoral artery, way down in her groin. She heard the cardiologist say her arteries are too small, and lead surgeon Dr. Spetzler reply, "Try the other side."
Impossible. You can't hallucinate the design of a hidden tool, and you can't hear a conversation in your groin when your brain is off. So if she was dead, but the witness, the pilot, was seeing more clearly than ever.
Then the pilot of the psyche exists non-locally. And to explain that, we have to shift from biology to physics.
This is where Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff come in, the Orch-Orr theory.
Right. They argue the brain is not a wet computer. Consciousness isn't just something that happens when you have enough wires. It's more fundamental.
So what is the brain then?
It's a highly sophisticated antenna. It tunes into consciousness, which they propose is a non-local property of the universe itself, baked into the fabric of space-time.
And where does this tuning happen?
Deep inside the cellular skeleton. In these structures called microtubules, they believe quantum processes are happening in there.
So when Pam Reynolds' body died, the radio broke.
The radio broke. The antenna was destroyed. The quantum coherence was lost. But here's the key. A fundamental law of physics says quantum information cannot be destroyed.
It has to go somewhere.
So the self, the consciousness, it simply delocalizes. It returns to the structure of space-time, which is how Pam Reynolds could be outside her body observing the room. Her consciousness was operating without the constraints of her physical brain.
Okay, so if the pilot is real and the brain is the antenna, the next question is unavoidable. Did ancient engineers know how to tune this thing manually?
It seems they did. We have to stop looking at certain figures as purely religious and start seeing them as perception engineers.
People who are trying to induce this hyperlucid state voluntarily without dying.
Absolutely. Take the Essenes at Qumran. They weren't just monks. They built what you could call a bunker of consciousness out in the desert.
What was their protocol?
Sensory deprivation, for one. The desert itself was an anechoic chamber to quiet the senses. Then they used rhythmic practices, vigils, chanting, and even thermal shock, like the mikveh, to reset the nervous system.
The goal being
to induce the same gamma hyperlucidity that Dr. Parney had detected in dying patients, but to do it with discipline and intention, to reach what they called the Merkaba, the source code, without the trauma of cardiac arrest.
you were trying to tune the receiver without breaking it.
Exactly. And then you have someone like Abraham Abulafia in the 13th century, a cognitive hacker. He developed a protocol specifically to overload the logical mind.
What was it called?
Hokmat Hansaruf, the science of letter combination. It's a cognitive saturation technique. You rapidly permutate Hebrew letters and vowels with specific breathing, specific movements.
He wasn't meditating on the meaning.
No, not at all. He was using them as computational units to cause a system crash in the left hemisphere.
A psychological circuit breaker.
A forced reboot. The goal was Hatrite Nedarim, the untying of knots that bind the soul to sensory reality, which leads to Batul. Ego dissolution, nullification. He knew the ego, the passenger, was blocking the signal from the pilot.
And this idea of the selfish ego, that brings us right into the modern day, to the work of Yehuda Ashlag, the physicist of intention.
Ashlag diagnosed why all our social systems ultimately fail, whether it's Marxism or capitalism. They ignore the fundamental operating system of human nature.
The ratson likable, the will to receive.
Selfishness. The desire to take for oneself, period.
So if the non-local pilot is real and the brain can be tuned, the actual work of being human is to correct the intention of that receiving antenna.
That is the entire point. His key concept is disparity of form. We are disconnected from the source, which is pure bestowal, because our nature is the exact opposite. Pure receiving. And you can't just eliminate desire, but you can change the intention behind it. The Kavanaugh.
It's a crucial difference. You can't stop being hungry, but you can change why you eat.
It's the guest-host analogy. The guest is wired to receive, to eat. But if the guest can make the inner effort to eat with the intention of giving pleasure to the host,
the act of receiving becomes an act of bestowing.
The external action is identical, the internal purpose is inverted. And that transformation of intention, that is the entire purpose of human life. Tikkun, rectification.
So we have the science from Pam Reynolds and Penrose confirming the pilot is real and non-local. And then we have the ancient engineering, the tikkun, showing us how to correct our internal state to navigate that reality.
The pieces fit perfectly. NDEs prove the capacity exists. The ancient systems provide the operator's manual for fixing the character, the ego, that keeps us from using that capacity while we're alive.
And we can actually measure the efficacy of this. When that ego nullification, that bitul, is achieved, what happens to your actual output? The A.R.K. Insider Report is basically empirical data on this.
The shift in creative and structural power was absolute. The ability to write a complex book in 24 hours, to structure a whole worldview in 14 days, it demonstrates that the small, scared ego is the bottleneck. When the pilot takes the controls, the power shift is immediate.
Which brings us to the urgent consequence for everyone listening. We have godlike technological power, but we are wielding it with the intention of that selfish, small mammal ego.
And that's why this spiritual work is the last line of defense. As Baal HaSulam warned, systems do not fail, human intention fails. Our technology, coupled with our uncorrected will to receive, leads straight to techno-feudalism and collapse. The internal audit, the work of tikkun. It's the only thing that ensures the pilot is flying the plane, not the panicked passenger.
So the final challenge to you, the listener, is this. Don't wait for cardiac arrest to find out who you really are. Don't wait for a flatline to meet the pilot. Become the pilot of your own psyche now. This knowledge doesn't ask for belief, it demands work.
And for those who are ready to move from this forensic theory to actual personal engineering, the blueprint exists. The operational guides, the compendium, the 1177 protocol, and the psychological tree of life initiation course are available. This isn't a mystery to be admired. It's a technology to be mastered, something for you to mull or explore on your own.